Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It is me, your host, Jagger, and then with me as always is our Dynasty Captain, Jeff Bell. And again, guys, we are up to 3 shows a week. And the first one that we're going to be giving to you every week is our Dynasty Risers and Fallers. I really wasn't going to do this week, but things have started to happen, and we're at that cut week. We've got even more, I wouldn't say tangible coach speak, but I would at least say a little bit more realistic coach speak on a couple of things. So we're going to give you give you our opinions, and try to give you some actionable advice on them. The first one we got is Jamar Chase. Out of all of them that I thought not to get a contract, I thought Jamar Chase was the least of my worries. And then here we are, and he's still not at practice. Jeff, where are you at on the Jamar Chase situation?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down. We were talking about it offline a little bit in our little company chat we have, and basically, if I were Jamar Chase and you were to tell me that you're not going to be able to pay my friend T Higgins, then you better pay me, because if you're saving that money for me, you better give it to me. There are some rumors, innuendo, questions about the Bengals having enough money to actually write the check, more or less, and put the money in escrow that would be required. That's been floated about. Some of it's, Jamar Chase is 2 years out from being due for a contract, so that might be part of it as well. We've seen every other wide receiver now, especially with CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk's contracts get done. I think he plays? I don't know that he plays week 1. I think that he definitely probably would play week 2, would be my expectation. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely uncharted territory now. We're sitting here less than 5 days away from the season starting.
Yeah, and again, it's like I don't I don't feel like he's going to practice or he's going to play week 1 since we're this close, and I'm wondering if we got another Jonathan Taylor type situation, and it's like we know what the talent is, and like you said, it's a bit confusing considering that it's 2 years out, and I understand that, um, I understand that he wants to be valued the same as everyone else, but I mean, why don't you just win right now and then worry about that in the offseason? It seems pretty petty to me. I definitely think this opens up a buy window for us right now in Dynasty. Right now, he is going. Let me get that for you. He's going as the wide receiver 4 still, and like the top 4 just kind of bounce around. And he's ninth overall, so he's still going about the same spot in like startups where you can get him maybe towards the tail end. But I mean, used to, let's say if you're in one QB or even in redraft at this point, he was a top 2 pick, so that's a bit of a fall. And if he doesn't play week 1, I think that's when the panic sell can come in. So I'm interested, guys. Like we said, we're doing a trade show for you. So if you guys start getting these buy windows, let me know those trades so we could see how they're going for. What do you think the cost for Jamar Chase is going to be, Jeff? Could throw out a prediction.
In terms of contract,
Um, well, when contract is fine. I mean, for like if there's a buy window for dynasty players.
I mean, what? How many firsts do you want to get Jamar Chase? I guess is probably the question. 2 to 3, I would think, would be probably where the conversation kind of starts, or maybe a tier down plus a first round. But
Yeah.
he's definitely a player that I think many would have considered him unmovable, and now might consider him movable. Again, it's tough. I feel like whenever I see these types of deals done, I acquired Chase in one league. I traded Justin Herbert for him because I was overloaded with quarterbacks. I was planning on having Marvin Harrison Jr. Team in front of me took Marvin Harrison Jr., so I got Caleb Williams. Suddenly I had an extra quarterback. And so I traded Herbert for Jamar Chase. That's about the only movement I've seen practically for Jamar Chase. And again, that was a situation where somebody needed a quarterback in a super flex league. So I think like those types of things potentially, I don't know. It doesn't seem that I see a lot of people willing to move a player like Jamar Chase for like a Nico Collins at a first, or but
That
again,
was the exact trade I was going to ask you. Like, would you do like Nico for a first for Jamar Chase?
I mean, I'd still take Chase like all day, every day. And so that's again, I'm just not very concerned about in Dynasty. I mean, I understand if you're nervous about missing a month, well, then your team's not as good as you think it is. And maybe you need to be looking at some other areas to move, not so much Jamar Chase.
Yeah. I think at this point I'm never willing to underestimate the panic that dynasty
Oh
managers
yeah,
have, especially at the beginning of the season
yeah.
when we've been sitting around. So like it'll happen even though that like you said you probably should just sit on them. And for me, I got a couple of rosters where it's like I bought him just like you said, where there was a dip, whether it be the Joe Burrow injury. I feel like there's been multiple Jamar Chase windows, and I've tried to capitalize every time. I'm going to try to do it again, but when it comes to those rosters where I'm ready to win, it's how long am I willing to wait out? Normally on my rosters, I have pretty deep wide receivers, so it's just okay, you're going to sit on my bench and I'll figure it out, but there's no use giving you up at this point because what are you expecting a player to be? You're hoping that they're going to be Jamar Chase.
Right.
So before we move on, remember to like and subscribe to these videos. And like I said earlier, guys, we're going to have our trade show and we collect those in the comments. So if you're listening to us on Apple, leave us a review, give us your trade then, and I'll go pull some. You guys have been doing great on YouTube. All of our trades are pulled from there, and I gave you guys a little mention. So just give us a comment. More importantly, the season's here, guys. So go over to footballguys.com/plans. Me and Jeff have our rankings on there. Jeff has articles coming out. I have one coming out. We actually have a show this week. We're going to go and talk about our big board because people have been telling you to fade the 2025 class, and that's crazy. So yeah, go over to footballguys.com/plans. And if you still have any drafts coming up late, then we do have our draft sync there as well. All right, for our next mover, Jeff, this I, I may be premature on this because I guess he finally is trending up on like let's say a sleeper tag, but it's a Noah Brown. Where are you at with him now? Do you think he's actually going to be something in this Kingsbury system? And by be something, being the wide receiver two, and moreover, does the wide receiver two actually have value out of that system?
I don't believe it does. Not with Jaden Daniels. I think from what we've seen in the preseason so far, Jaden Daniels is running a lot of first read type action to Terry. I expect Terry McLaurin to get just hyper targeted. We saw that with DeAndre Hopkins in Cliff Kingsbury's system. I think Noah Brown is a better. I like Noah Brown quite a bit, but I think Noah Brown is a better football player than he is a fantasy football player. I still think that you're going to see the way that I've projected it out is hyper targeting to Terry McLaurin and then just kind of a spread between
Yep.
Noah Brown getting a little bit and Olamide Zacchaeus getting a little bit and Diami Brown still getting involved, and then having the tight ends with really starting the year heavy, maybe with Zach Ertz, and then maybe working Benson in. But that's kind of, I think that really though, when you break down this offense, the backs, I like both backs, Jane Daniels and then Terry McLaurin. And other than that, I mean, if you're in a deep enough league, he's worth a flyer for sure. If you're able to get him off of your waiver, because yeah, it could break in that direction where it's wide open. Second in the team in targets is potential, but I don't really expect that.
Yeah, that's I picked him up everywhere I could because of course we hit the week of camp where a lot of people are getting cut or moving to IR and a lot of movement around. So I had some free spots, and that's kind of where I see it, where he's probably a better and best ball type player. And then, and I'm not saying he's not going to have any production, but it's going to be like you said, it's Terry McLaurin, the running game, and then everybody else. And if you're going to be playing and it's a bye week and you're sticking him in the flex and hoping he pops for a touchdown because he's that type of player. So what would you say his value is? Is he even worth a third round pick? That's too much, or is it more like depth player for depth player? Like,
I mean, depth player for depth player. I would be, if I were holding him and I wanted to move him, I'd be looking for a backup running back that I think was an injury away from realizing some sort of relevance.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can get a third for Noah Brown. If so, I'm playing the wrong game.
Yeah, I know. It's what it's like. I feel like the reason why I ask a third is that's everyone's benchmark of any value because you got a lot of the crowd that doesn't even care about third rounders anymore, and maybe I care about him a little too much. Um, yeah, that's where I'm at. Like I said, guys, he's worth the roster spot if you have it, but like don't go dropping players that can actually give you like value right away. I guess
Dynasty show, people are going to be mad that I didn't mention Luke McCaffrey. I just kind of realized that, but I traded Luke McCaffrey where I had him after the news from Jahan Dotson. I kind of took that
Hmm.
as a sell window because the reports that I've seen was Luke McCaffrey had been running with the third team and was closer to being off the roster than
Yeah.
fantasy relevant.
A lot of people are, what do you call it, like Nepo scouting? It's not helmet scouting, but Luke McCaffrey only played wide receiver like 1 year, and it was at Rice. And like I know that he's athletic and can make plays, but it's not exactly like he was productive out of a like a Power 5 school or something like that. So I never understood the Luke McCaffrey hype, and I think I have a couple of shares, and the fact that I don't remember it is kind of telling for you guys out there. Because it's like you said, I haven't heard anything, and a team that's desperate for playmakers, you would kind of hope like a guy like that would make some splash plays. I guess one more trade. Would you give Jordan Whittington for Noah Brown, or would you rather have Whittington?
I would rather have Whittington. I think
Hmm.
that there's going to be some interesting packages that Whittington's going to be used in this year. I would expect Noah Brown outscores Jordan Whittington, but Jordan Whittington, I think, is primed to step in. You know, if Cooper Kupp slows down or if somebody Puka Nakua misses some time with injury, that's when you're going to see something really big out of Jordan Whittington right now. But no, I just have a lot more trust in Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford in general for a wide receiver too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for me because I had that choice basically on waivers. It's do I want this fun guy that was cool for an hour, or do I want this guy that was fun and cool for an hour? So the next one, this is actually real, and then I had some mean folks say some things about me because I've been low on Isiah Pacheco, and whether my reasoning was right, I think at least that him being a faller is apparent because it really feels like that this backfield's going to be a mess. We heard coaching or word from beat reporters that yeah, Pacheco's going to get the early down work, but Samaje Perine going to be the third down back, and then on the goal line, that could be Carson Steele, and that's makes sense when you think about all their strengths. So that would leave Isiah Pacheco with kind of like the most useless role out of all this when it comes to fantasy relevance. And on top of that, uh, really, I think at this point you just should be moving him. Am I right?
If you can, yeah,
Mm.
and I think that if you've got him and you want to move him, we might be sitting on what a 48-hour window because you're exactly right. If they everything that I've heard from camp has been Pacheco kind of is the way that I've heard it described. Pacheco is the first guy to touch the ball, and then passing
Mm.
downs work would be Perine. And then the Chiefs have really struggled in short yardage over the last 2 years, and they feel like Carson Steele could be that answer to that. So, yeah, I mean, we're sitting here Thursday night. We know that the biggest overreaction game of the year is that first Thursday night game. If it comes out and there's a situation where Samaje Perine is playing 80% of the third downs and out targets Isiah Pacheco, and then if you put Carson Steele in for a goal line carry over Isiah Pacheco, that spiral, that spin on Pacheco coming out of that game is going to be extreme. I think there's
Yeah,
still a path to relevance. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that he can be. I mean, people were out here saying that he could be a top 5 running back, and maybe in a different land he could have been in that offense. But now I think that you're looking probably more towards running back 16-ish, back end of middle to back end of running back 2 range, probably more realistically. And there's a path to that, but it's just not going to be this guy that we thought was going to be a league breaker potentially.
yeah, and that's my point was everyone liked Pacheco because he's fun to watch and he was there. But
Yeah.
objectively, he was never a well-rounded player. Like again, he's a good early down back, but and someone gave me he got this many touchdowns. Do you know how often the Chiefs are in the red zone? It should have been more. If you really think
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
it should have been more. If you think how often that Patrick Mahomes puts you in position for success. Moreover, let's just do the draft capital game, guys. Like, yeah, they may not be paying running backs that much, but if you're not at least a fourth rounder, they don't have much value for you if you're, and again, unless you're putting up eye-popping numbers. And Isiah Pacheco hasn't really done that. He's just done just enough. And like, let's say right now he's the RB11 on Keep Trade Cut, and the 53rd ranked player overall. Kenneth Walker is just right ahead of him. Rashee Rice is right below him. T. Higgins, Drake May, Brian Thomas Jr., Kyle Pitts. So like there are player for player trades that even if you're loaded at receiver, just go get another good receiver and then flip them for another running back later. Like it seems like you can get a lot of value for them right now. It's really not worth the risk when you really think about the writing that's kind of been on the wall, guys. Our next guy, I would say it's actually not a guy, it's a collection of guys. It is our Risers first round draft picks, Jeff. I've been doing our rookie big board, and I know it's a week 0 and week 1 or whatever you want to call it in college football, and a lot of guys are getting those paid wins. They're playing scrubs. But even before that, doing a deeper dive into this class, people are really underestimating the talent. Particularly, I don't think they realize just how good the running backs are. I don't think they realize, well, now they do. They realize how good the receivers are, but they're definitely underestimating the quarterbacks. So, specifically with the quarterbacks, do you think, especially after what we see now, we definitely got at least 2 first rounders?
Are you saying between Carson Beck and what, Shedeur Sanders are your two?
Or even it, or any of them? Drew Allar, Quinn Ewers. You don't have to pick any of
Garrett
mine.
Nussmeier was a guy that I think had a good game last night, even though his team didn't win the game. But really, what it came down to it, you look 2 years ago, the Bijan Robinson draft. That had been labeled the Bijan Robinson draft for 3 years. And then you also had Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, big time areas there. And so the biggest reason why people have not been on this class has been, well, it's not the blank class. And now it's officially the Tet McMillan class, and then Luther Burden is going to be there, and then Ashton Genty, the way that he went off for 267 yards and 6 touchdowns, like, so now they're, as soon as some names can be attached to those draft picks, you're going to see the value rise on that, because people are not dealing with the unknown. They're dealing with, okay, well, this pick could be Tet McMillan, and he just went for 300 plus yards. I definitely want him on my team.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. That's the only reason why it had been diminished, devalued, because you didn't have that gem, that you weren't buying a ticket for the Bijan Robinson lottery. But now we starting to see out of these wide receivers, and then there are going to be quarterbacks there. There are going to be quarterbacks that go top 10 in the draft. There are almost always quarterbacks that go top 10 in the draft, except for that Kenny Pickett year. But outside of that, there's definitely players that there's a need among teams. We see across the league. I mean, Gardner Minshew's starting at quarterback on week 1 somewhere. So there's definitely a need for some starting quarterbacks across the league, and there will be players that will emerge there.
Yeah, and I just, for everything I've seen, one, just more physically talented than, and I don't mean Malik Willis physically talented. I mean they played in real systems and have actual mechanics. Because like I saw it thrown around again. Everyone's like, well, you remember, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, and Malik Willis. These guys are a lot more talented. And like you said, Garrett Nussmeier, that is an asterisk on mine, because he's like the one QB I didn't dive deep into, and he had a really great game, So this is always a lesson, guys. Always just value your first, pretty highly. Once you get a Caleb Williams, then I'm not saying go crazy, but you could start making, I guess, valuing them a little higher, your Bijan Robinsons. But like there's always a stud almost every year at some point, So especially if you're a rebuilder, and I'm not saying to tank, try to go pick up these seconds, because again, like looking at this big board, and you guys like stick around because we're going to be going over that on Thursday's episode. A lot of like good talent is going to get pushed down, and even these guys that I've graded highly, something may happen, some report may happen, and they'll fall down in the second round. So, and then there's always the risers on it. So to me, it's really encouraging, and I've sold some seconds on rebuilders, and I almost want them back, even though I know that they were necessary. Um, do you think it's going to be as deep, let's say, like the 2023 year at this point now?
Um, yeah, I think lining up there because who were the top wide receivers? I'm blanking a little bit on who did we want
Uh,
at
th-
wide receiver that
that
year.
was JSN, Zay
Okay.
Flowers, Quentin Johnston,
I mean,
Jaden
we feel
Reed.
better about the wide receivers right now, I think, than those
Yeah.
guys going in, 20th overall or so was when the first receiver went. So I think right now, at least McMillan profiles to be a top 10 NFL pick, and um, Luther Burden probably does as well. He's a little bit quieter production wise relative to what McMillan put out. But yeah, we're really just again, we were just missing. You didn't have the Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. headliners, or we already have people. Jeremiah Smith, I think it's going to be the 2027 class, maybe that. Yeah,
Hmm.
he would be in that. Like I already see people that are like, well, go get your 2027 first, so you can get Jeremiah Smith. But yeah, no, there will be players there that raise their profile to that level.
Yeah. And another position group that I've like kind of been gushing over is the tight end class this year. This is a really, really good class. Like, that actually reminds me of 2023, and it might be even a little bit better than that class. And it's like you said, the wide receivers I think are better, and the running backs. We don't have a Bijan Robinson, but we have like four Jameer Gibbs, Kenneth Walker level prospects that are good, that are going to be very good, and there's actually a running back depth problem at this point. If you look at the Cowboys, if you look at the Raiders, there's a lot of needs for and teams that actually value the running back position, like the Cowboys. And I don't know if Antonio Pierce is going to be there next season, but if he is, he's someone who likes to use the old adage, establish the run. Well, we'll finish with one last one, and this is kind of unfortunate. But Ricky Pearsall is on IR at this point, and luckily he's going to be okay. But he had a tragedy, got shot. So I think at this point this is a red shirt season. I really don't see it happening. I don't know. He got shot in the chest, so he's going to be out. I'm assuming like at least 6 weeks. I'm not a doctor. We don't have Adam on here. I'm definitely going to ask him on our first Sunday show. And with that being said, he hasn't really been on the field in training camp. So for him to actually be a player that you're going to start, you got to be hurting. Like, to me, it's not even just putting him on your IR. If you have an IR, cool. I've put him on my taxi squad for the season, and I'm just not going to think about him.
Yeah, and that brings up, I mean, one, yes, and it was almost exactly a year to the day after Brian Robinson
Brian
Jr.
Robinson.
got shot. So, yeah, and we saw him come back. I think, well, he was put on the pup, and Pearsall was put on the pup, and so Robinson Jr. came back in week 5 last year, and he even just said, now there were comments about him this summer that was the first time that he felt back to normal after that happening, and I think I mean, obviously, this is a very unfortunate circumstance, and he's okay, so that's
Mm-hmm.
good. But at the same time, maybe the bigger thing for him was the Brandon Ayuk extension and that deal getting done. So
Yep.
that that happening eliminated that path to immediate relevancy. And yeah, now it's not even injury contingency on Pearsall. You're exactly right. You're almost writing this year off, and he might take a year before he feels like himself. And so that's where I don't know. A lot of people, if you're going to panic about a game or two from Jamar Chase, then Ricky Pearsall, his dynasty value feels like gone for the moment. So
Yeah, it does. Like, you're holding him for the most part. Like the trade window for you to get, because I tried to trade him in a couple of spots and like some contenders, and I couldn't really get anything done. You're not
yeah,
going to get anything done now. And I, if he wasn't a 49er, I would kind of just say he's done at this point. But I know that the 49ers are a patient organization, and they'll bring guys on slowly. And I just think that you're kind of just waiting on Debo to get traded or sent to another team at this point.
That's exactly it. But I mean, we see how often do you see it? People have the belief that, well, if he were good, he would be earning targets. He would earning his way on the field. And because he's not, like, people really struggle situationally to understand that, one, NFL teams can be a little bit patient with some situations, and two, maybe he was drafted because they weren't unsure about Brandon Ayuk's future. But yeah, we do see it all the time of, well, if he were really good, then he would force his way onto the field, and so maybe he's just not any good.
Yeah, and that's not the case. And it's like, and it's super frustrating. And I know like a lot of data driven analysis uh, kind of pushes that narrative, but even when you have tangible, like that's I'm curious to say, it's like he got shot, and someone like, well, if he was good, he would have immediately healed or pulled a Wolverine or something. Yeah, I know. It's just like what are you talking about? That's why I'm saying, guys, just put him on your taxi squad. Worry about it next season because you're probably not going to have anything real, and if you do, it's not going to happen until end of the season, and by then you're either in or out of the dance at that point, or you're fighting so hard that you don't want to risk it by starting a player like Ricky Pearsall at that point. Mm-hmm. But that'll do it for this episode, guys. Like I said, we're doing 3 of these a week, so they're going to be a little bit shorter, but we're going to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more frequent. So if you have any trade questions, our next episode is a trade episode. I'll pull those from everywhere. So give me those with all the information you can, like Superflex, PPR, and the comments, and me and Jeff will break those down for you. In the meantime, as always, I'm Jagger May. With me is Jeff Bell, and we'll see you guys on the next one.